Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. My current storybook demonstrations through reading aloud is about the giver. By the way, I am Alajin B. Colegado, your teacher for today, to explain the importance of the giver in our society. So let's start and listen carefully. This book indicates the individual being able to choose a positive interactions with each other and having a positive mindset. He or she has a awaited future. The giver is the winner of the 1994 Newbery Medal. I hope at the end of the story you have learned a lot. The Giver by Lois. The genre focuses on science fictions. The area target is a young adult literature. The date of publications was in 1993, and the publisher is Houghton Mifflin. Character list. Jonas is an introspective boy who thinks a good deal about what is happening around him. He is also curious, considerate, observant, intelligent, and brave. The 11-year-old protagonist of The Giver, sensitive and intelligent with strange powers of perceptions that he doesn't understand. Jonas is chosen to be the new receiver of memory for the community when he turns 12. Even before his training, Jonas is unusually thoughtful, experiences great concern for his friends and family, and thinks it will be nice to be closer to other people. After his training begins, Jonas' universe widens dramatically. His new awareness of strong emotions, beautiful colors, and great suffering makes him extremely passionate about the world around him and the welfare of the people he loves. True on the whole, he remains level-headed and thoughtful. The next one is the giver. The old man known in the community as the receiver of memory. The giver has held the community's collective memory for many years and uses his wisdom to help the community of the elders, makes important decisions even though he is rocked by the pain his memories give him, and believes that perhaps those memories belong in the minds of everyone in the community. Like Jonas, who is a young person with the wisdom of an old person. The giver is a bit of a paradox. He looks ancient, but he is not old at all. Like someone who has seen and done many things over many years. He is very wise and word-weary, and he is haunted by memories of suffering and pain. But in reality, his life has been surprisingly uneventful. In the word of the community, the giver has spent most of his life inside his comfortable living quarters, eating his meals and emerging occasionally to take long walks. Yet he carries the memories of an entire community, so he feels like a man who has done more in his life than anyone else in the world. He has experienced the positive and negative emotions, desires, triumphs, and failures of millions of men and women as well as animals. He is responsible for preserving those memories and using the wisdom they give him to make decisions for the community. Anyone would feel weighted down by this enormous responsibility, and because the giver is forbidden to share his knowledge and pain with anyone else, including his spouse and his children, the weight is more difficult to bear. Thus the giver has become an exceptional patience, quiet, deliberate person, growing resigned to the fact that he cannot change the community even though he realizes that it needs to be changed. He endures his loneliness and frustrations, as well as the increasing physical pain that the memories bring him, with a quiet calm that makes him rather stoic figure. His patience, wisdom, restraints make him an excellent teacher and mentor. The next slide. Jonas Badger, a mild-mannered, tender-hearted nurturer who works with infants, is very sweet with his two children. He enjoys his jobs and takes it very seriously, constantly trying to nurture children who will stay alive until the ceremony of names. However, even if he is attached to a child, he will release if that it seems to be the best decisions. He has an affectionate, playful relationships with his two children, usually referring them by silly nicknames, and he likes playing childish games with the children he nurtures. Jonas' father is one of the only characters in the novel, beside the giver and Jonas, who seems to grapple with difficult decisions and complex emotions. Although Jonas' father does not have access to the memories that give Jonas and the giver insight into human relationships and feelings, he displays many of the characteristics that were valued in pre-sameness societies. As a nurturer, he feels a strong connection with the babies he cares for and a deep concern for their welfare. Although he agrees with Jonah's mother that love is as meaningless, obscure word, the feelings he displays toward the new children and his family seem very much like love. He delights in taking care of them and flying with them. He worries about them and makes minor and major sacrifices for their benefit, from indulging his daughter's proudness for her comfort objects to bringing baby Gabriel home to his family every night in the hopes of saving him from being released. His concern for the new children might be concerned about his own personal failures as a nurturer, but he obviously feels pain and regret when children are released. He also has an independent streak that is unusual and community demonstrated when he breaks a rule and picks at gravel names in the hopes that it will the child. Jonas Mather, a practical, pleasant woman with an important position at the Department of Justice. Jonas' mother takes her work seriously, hoping to help people who break rules see the error of their ways. She frequently gives Jonas advice about the worries and fears he faces as he grows up. Jonas' mother is the stricter of his two parents. She holds up prominent positions at the Department of Justice, and her job involves punishing citizens who break the community rules. Throughout the novels, she places value on performing to the community's standards and teaches her children about the honor held by various rules. For example, when Lily instantly suggests the job of bird mother Luxpan, Jonah's mother responds very sharply and explains the laborious natures of the rule, indicating that she cannot tolerate the thought of one of her children receiving such a lowly assignment. She also encourages Lily to detach from her comfort objects before she's an 8, which suggests that Jonah's mother wants her children to meet every societal expectations for majority. When Jonah's father condemns Lily, Jonas and his mother roll their eyes, looking down on the sentimentality of Jonah's fathers and Lily. Despite her intelligence and pleasantness, Jonah's mother doesn't value all contributions from members of the community equally and judges others based on how well they embody her societal ideas. The next slide is the symbols. First is the Nucius Gabriel. For Jonas, the Nucius Gabriel is a symbol of hope and of starting over. Babies frequently figure as symbols of hope and regenerations and literatures. And in the giver, this makes perfect sense. Gabriel is too young to have absorbed in the customs and rules of the community, so he is still receptive to the powerful memories that Jonas transmits to him. Jonas takes Gabriel with him to save Gabriel's life, but his gestures is also symbolic of his resolve to change things, to start a new life elsewhere. His struggles to keep Gabriel alive reflect his struggle to maintain his ideals and the face of difficulty. The next slide is the slant. The slant, the first memory Jonas receives from the giver, symbolizes the journey Jonas takes during his training and the discoveries he makes. It is red, a color that symbolizes the new, vital world of feelings and ideas that Jonas discovers. Before he transmits the memory, the giver compares the difficulty he has in carrying the memories to the way a sled slows down as snow accumulates on its runners. The novelty and delight of the downhill ride are exhilarating, and Jonas enjoys the ride in the same way that he enjoys accumulating new memories. But the sled can be treacherous to the first memory of extreme pain that he experiences involves the sled. Pleasures and pain are inevitably related on the sled, just as they are the memories with at the end of the novel. Jonas spied a real sled. It symbolizes his entry into the world where color, sensations, and emotions exist in reality, not just in memory. The next slide is the river. The river which runs into the community and out of it to elsewhere symbolizes escape from the confines of the community. When little Gavley drowns in the river, it is one of the few events that the community cannot predict or control. In Jonas and the Giver are inspired to try to change the community by the idea of the river's unpredictable behavior. Now let us discuss the themes. The importance of memory. One of the most important themes in The Giver is the significance of memory to human life. Lowry was inspired to write The Giver after a visit to her aging father who had lost most of his long-term memory. She realizes that without memory, There is no pain. If you cannot remember physical pain, you might as well not have experienced it. And you cannot be plagued by regret or grief if you cannot remember the events that hurt you. At some point in the past, the community and the giver decided to eliminate all pain from their lives. To do so, they had to give up the memories of their society's collective experiences. Not only did this allow them to forget all of the pain that had been suffered throughout human history, it also prevented memories of the society from wanting to engage in activities and relationships that could result in conflict and suffering. It eliminated any nostalgia for the things that the community gives up in order to live in total peace and harmony. According to the novel, however, memory is essential. The community of elders thus recognize the practical applications of memory. If you do not remember your errors or failures, you may repeat them, so it designates a receiver to remember history of the community. But as Jonas undergoes his training, he learns that just as there is no faith without memory, there is also no true happiness. The next slide is the relationships between pain and pleasures. Related to the theme of memory is the idea that there can be no pleasures without pain and no pain without pleasures. No matter how delightful experience is, you cannot value the pleasures it gives you unless you have some memory of a time when you have suffered. The members of Jonah's community cannot appreciate the joys in their lives because they have never felt pain. Their lives are totally monotonous, devoid of emotional variations. Similarly, they do not feel pain or grief because they do not appreciate the true wonder of life or true meaning of life. Death is not tragic to them because life is not precious or meaningful to them. When Jonas receives memory from the giver, the memories of pain often him to the idea of love and comfort as much as memories of pleasures do. The next slide is the importance of the individual. At the ceremony of 12, the community celebrates the differences between the 12-year-old children for the first time in their lives. For many children, 12 is an age when they are struggling to carve out a distinct identity for themselves, differentiating themselves from their parents and peers. Among other things, the giver is the story of Jonah's development into an individual, maturing from a child dependent upon his community into a young man with a unique abilities and dreams and desires. The novel can even be seen as an allegory for this process of maturation. 12-year-old Jonas rejects a society where everyone is the same to follow his own path. The novel encourages readers to celebrate differences instead of disparaging them or pretending they do not exist. People in Jonas' societies ignore his unusual eyes and strange abilities out of politeness. But those unusual qualities end up bringing lasting positive change to the community. Now, I will proceed to the most exciting part, and I will read the novel chapter 1. To able to understand the importance of the giver being a good person within the community to making our choices a positive mindset. It was almost December, and Jonas was beginning to be frightened. No wrong word, Jonas thought. Frightened meant that this sickening feeling of something terrible about to happen. Frightened was the way he had felt a year ago when an unidentified aircraft had overflowed the community twice. He had seen it both times squinting toward the sky. He had seen the slick jet, almost a blur at his high speed, go past and a second later heard the blast of sound that followed. Then one more time. A moment later, from the opposite directions, the same plane. At first, he had been only fascinated. He had never seen aircraft so close, for it was against the rules for pilots to fly over the community. Occasionally, when supplies were delivered by cargo planes to the landing field across the river, the children threw their bicycles to the river bank and watched intrigued the unloading and then the take-off directed to the west, always away from the community. But the aircraft a year ago had been different. It was not a squat, a fat-filled cargo plane, but a needle-nosed single-pilot jet. Jonas, looking around anxiously, had seen others, adults as well as children, stop what they were doing and wait, confused, for an explanation of the frightening event. Then all of the citizens had been ordered to go into the nearest building and stay there. Immediately, the rasping voice through the speakers had said, "Leave your bicycles where they are." Instantly, obediently, Jonas had dropped his bike on his side on the path behind his family's dwelling. He had run indoors and stayed there alone. His parents were both at work and his little sister Lily was in the childcare center where she spent her after-school hours. Looking through the front window, he had seen no people, none of the busy afternoon crew of street cleaners, landscape workers, and food delivery people, who usually populated the community at the time of day. He saw only abandoned bikes here and there on their sides, and a turn wheel on one of still revolving slowly. He had been frightened then. The sense of his own community silent, waiting, had made his stomach churn. He had trembled. But it has been nothing. Within minutes the speakers had crackled again, and the voice reassuring now and less urgent, had explained that a pilot in training had misread his navigational instructions and made a wrong turn. Desperately, the pilot had been trying to make his way back before his error was noticed. Needless to say, he will be released, the boys had said, followed by silence. There was an ironic tone to the final message, as if the speaker found it amusing, and Jonas had smiled a little, though he knew what a grim statement it had been. For a contributing citizen to be released from the community was a final decision, a terrible punishment, an overwhelming statement of failure. Even the children were scolded if they used the term light at play during an attainment who missed a catch or stumble in a race. That's it, Asher! You're released! When Asher's clumsy error had lost a match for his team, he had been taken aside for a brief and serious talk by the coach, had hugged his head with guilt and embarrassment, and apologized to ushers after the game. Now, thinking about the feeling of fear as he pedaled home along the river path, he remembered that moment of palpable, stomach-sinking error when the aircraft had stricken above. It was not what he was feeling now, with December approaching. He searched for the word to describe his own feeling. Jonas was careful about language. Not like his friend Asher, who talked too fast and mixed things up, scrambling words and phrases until they were barely recognizable and often very funny. Jonas grinned, remembering the morning that ushers had dashed into the classroom, late as usual, arriving breathlessly. In the middle of the chanting of the morning anthem. When the class took their seats at the conclusions of the patriotic hymn, ushers reminded standing to make his public apology as was required. I apologize for the conveniencing my learning community. Ushers ran through the standard apologies phrase rapidly, still catching his breath. The instructor in class waited patiently for his explanations. The students had all been grinning, because they had listened to Usher's explanations so many times before. I left home at the correct time when I was riding along near the hatchery. The crew was separating some salmons. I guess I just got distraught. Watching them, I apologized to my classmates, Ushers concluded. He smoothed his rumpled tunic and sat down. We accept your apology, Ushers. The class recited the standard response in unison. Many of the students were biting their lips to keep from laughing. This, I accept your apology, Ushers, the instructor said. He was smiling. And I thank you because once again you have provided an opportunity for a lesson in English. Distraught is too strong an adjective to describe salmon viewing. He toned and wrote distraught on the instructional board beside it. He wrote distracted. Jonas is nearing his home now, smiled at the recollections, taking still as he wheeled his bike into his narrow path beside the door. Realizes that frightened was the wrong word to describe his feelings. Now that December was almost here, it was too strong an adjective. He had waited a long time for this special December. Now that it was almost upon him, he wasn't frightened, but he was eager, he decided. He was eager for it to come, and he was excited, certainly. All of the 11s were excited about the event that will be coming so soon. But there was a little shoulder of nervousness when he thought about it, about what might happen. Apprehensive, apprehensive. Jonas decided that's what I am. Who wants to be the person knight for feelings? Jonas Brothers asked. At the conclusions of their evening meal, it was one of the ritual the evening telling of feelings. Sometimes Jonas and his sister Lily argue over who would get to go first. Their parents, of course, were part of the rituals. They too told their feelings each evening, but like all parents, all adults, they didn't fight and whistle for their turn. Nor did Jonas tonight. His feelings were too complicated this evening. He wanted to share them, but he was in anger to begin the process of sifting through his own complicated emotions, even with the help that he knew his parents could give. You go, Lily, he said, singing his sister, who was much younger, only a 7, wiggling with impatience in her shirt. I feel very hungry this afternoon, Lily announced. My Shaker group was at the play area and we had a visiting group of 7s, and they hadn't obeyed the rules at all. One of them, a male, I don't know his name, kept going right to the front of the line for the slide, even though the rest of us were all waiting. I feel so angry at him. I made my hand into a fist like this. She held a clenched fist, and the rest of the family smiled at her small, defiant gesture. Why do you think the visitors didn't obey the rules? Mother asked. Lily considers and shook her head. I don't know, they acted like animals, Jonas suggested. He laughed. That's right, Lily said, clapping too. Like animals? Neither child knew what the word meant exactly, but it was often used to describe someone uneducated or clumsy, someone who didn't fit it. Where were the visitors from? Father asked. Lily frowned, trying to remember. Our leader told us when he made the welcome speech, but I can't remember. I guess I wasn't paying attention. It was from another community. They had to leave very early and they had their midday meal on the bus. Mother nodded. Do you think it's possible that their rules may be different? And so they simply didn't know what your play area rules were? Lily shrugged and nodded. I suppose you are visited other communities, haven't you? Jonas asked. My group has often. Lily nodded again. When we're sexes, we went and shared a whole school day with a group of sexes and their community. How do you feel when you were there? Lily frowned. I feel strange because their methods were different. They were learning usages that my group hadn't learned yet, so we feel stupid. Father was listening with interest. I'm taking Lily, he said, about the boy who didn't even obey the rules today. Do you think it's possible that he was strange and stupid being in a new place with rules that he didn't know about? Lily pondered that. Yes, she said finally. I feel a little sorry for him, Jonas said. Even though I don't even know him, I feel sorry for anyone who is in place where he feels strange and stupid. How do you feel now, Lily? Father asked. Still angry? I guess not, Lily decided. I guess I feel a little sorry for him, and sorry I made a fuss, she grinned. Jonah smiled back at his sisters. Lily's feelings were always straightforward, fairly simple, usually easy to resolve. He guessed that his own had been too when he was a 7. He listened politely though not very attentively, while his father took his turn describing a feeling of worry that he had that day at work. A concern about one of the new children who wasn't doing well. Jonah's father's title was a nurturer. He and the other nurturers were responsible for all the physical, emotional needs of every new child during the earliest life. It was a very important job, Jonas knew, but it wasn't one that interested him much. What gender is it? Lily asked. Male? Male, father said. He's sweet little male with a lovely dispositions, but he isn't growing as fast he should. He doesn't sleep soundly. We have him in the extra care sections for supplementary nurturing, but the community is beginning to talk about releasing him. Oh no, Mother murmured sympathetically. I know, I I know how sad that must make you feel. Jonas and Lily both nodded sympathetically as well. Release of new children was always sad because they hadn't had a chance to enjoy life within the community yet, and they hadn't done anything wrong. There were only 2 occasions of release which were not punishments. Release of the elderly, which was a time of celebrations for a life well and fully lived, and release of new child, which always brought a sense of what could we have done. This was especially troubling for the nurturers like father who felt they had failed somehow. But it happened very rarely. Well, father said, I'm going to keep trying. I may ask the committee for the permissions to bring him here at night. If you don't mind, you know what the night crew nurturers are like. I think this little guy needs something extra. Of course, Mother said, and Jonas and Lily nodded. They had heard Father complain about the night crew before. It was a lizard job. Night crew no showing assigned to those who lack the interest or skills or insight for the more vital jobs of the daytime hours. Most of the people on the night crew had not even been given spouses because they lack somehow the essential capacity to connect to others, which was required for the creation of a family unit. Maybe we could even keep him, Lily suggested sweetly, trying to look innocent. That the look was fake. Jonas knew they all knew. Lily, Mother reminded her, smiling. You know the rules. Two children, one male, one female, to each family unit. It was written very clearly and the rules. Lily giggled. Well, she said, I thought maybe just this once. Next, Mother, who held a prominent position at the Department of Justice, talked about her feelings. Today, repeat offender had been brought before her, someone who had broken the rules before, someone who she hoped he had been adequately and fairly punished, and who had been released to his place, to his jobs, his name, his family unit. To see him brought before her second time caused her overwhelming feelings of prostration and anger. And even glad that she hadn't made a difference in his life. I feel frightened too for him, she confessed. You know that there's no third chance. The rules say that if there's a third transgression, he simply has to be released. Jonas shivered. He knew it had happened. There was even a boy in his group of 11 whose father had been released years before. No one ever mentions it. The disgrace was unspeakable. It was hard to imagine. Lily stoned up and went to her mother. She stroked her mother's arm. From his place at the table, Father reached over and took her hand. Jonas reached for the other. One by one, they comforted her. Soon she smiled, take them, and memory that she felt sought. The ritual continued. Jonas, Father asked, you're last today. Jonas sighed. This evening he almost would have preferred to keep his feelings hidden. But it was, of course, against the rules. I'm feeling apprehensive, he confessed, glad that the appropriate descriptive word had finally come to him. Why is that, son? His father looked concerned. I know there's really nothing to worry about, Jonas explained, and that every adult has been through it. I know you have, Father, and you too, Mother, but it's the ceremony that I am apprehensive about. It's almost December. Lily looked up, her eyes wide. The ceremony of 12, she whispered in a low voice. Even the smallest children, Lily age and younger, knew that it lay in the future for each of them. I'm glad you told us of your feelings, Father said. Lily, Mother said, beckoning to the little girl. Go on now and get into your night clothes. Father and I are going to stay here and talk to Jonas for a while. Lily sighed, but obediently she got down from her chair. Privately, she asked. Mother nodded. Yes, she said. This talk will be a private one with Jonas. The next is the overview. Jonas, she said, is speaking not to him alone, but to the entire community of which he was a part. You will be trained to be our next receiver of memory. We thank you for childhood. That's all for the chapter 1. Thank you for watching.